Kanata Age is a good-for-nothing pathetic loser who is hated by everyone for being a traitor to his country. One day, he is tasked with teaching 3 loser girls who happen to know nothing about being a sky wizard. With that, Kanata starts teaching them while making them fall in love with him. However, before any of this, some girls can be seen fighting monstrous insects when a guy named Kanata arrives and destroys many of the monsters with a single attack. Kanata then goes on a killing spree, while Chloe and Lloyd also fight the monsters, but surprisingly there seems to be no end to them. Suddenly, Kanata rushes in and saves Chloe from one of the monsters, but in the process, he gets injured. Kanata then tells her to leave the place as he lures the monster away. He fights the monster, dealing some damage, until the final boss of the monsters arrives and attacks. A few months back, Chloe was seen presenting a report to Freon, the head of Sky Academy, about 3 girls named Misora, a red-hair girl with 124 losing streak, Lecty, a blonde shy girl who happened to be too nice, and as everyone knows, nice kids die first in anime, and Rico, the girl with goddess complex. Each of these students had their own issues, which made them the least successful in the academy. Freon decided that they needed help from a skilled teacher who could get them back on track, and he thought Kanata would be the perfect choice. Meanwhile, Kanata was busy looking over the academy's supplies when Lloyd came to visit him. Lloyd was pleased that Kanata was still around after some trouble a few years back. After checking the warehouse, Kanata started to think that someone might be stealing weapons. Lloyd then told Kanata that Freon wanted to meet him during lunch, which he was not too excited about. The following day, Kanata visited Freon. On his way back, he accidentally bumped into Misora and ended up touching her cannons by mistake. Misora immediately called him a creep and demanded an apology, but Kanata, being very confident, told her to apologize instead for hurting his private area. Instead of apologizing, Misora called over other students and accused him of being inappropriate. However, when she looked again, Kanata had already left, heading to the field sink to clean his pants. While washing the stain from his pants, Kanata ran into Rico. Seeing him in his shorts, Rico thought he had taken off his pants because of her attractiveness and assumed he appreciated her figure. But before she could say much, Kanata had already left for the nearby bathroom to put his pants back on. Later, Kanata enters the girls' bathroom again. When he realizes his mistake, he quickly tries to leave but bumps into Lecty, who is about to change her clothes. Lecty, seeing him standing there in just his shorts, calls him a creep, like many others have done before. Embarrassed, Kanata decides to head to the administration building to meet Freon. As he walks, people continue to call him a traitor, but Kanata has grown used to hearing this over the years. While going down the stairs, he runs into Yuri, who also calls him a traitor. It's still unclear why people keep using this word, but from their conversation, it seems connected to an incident involving an attack by beetle-like monsters. Later, Kanata and Chloe go to visit Freon in her office. Kanata feels uneasy about meeting with Freon alone. At first, Freon jokes about him being a traitor, but after a brief argument, she tells him he's going to be the instructor for the academy's 3 worst students. Kanata doesn't seem interested in teaching a group of girls and says no at first. But after learning that no other instructor was brave enough to take on the task, he quickly changes his mind and accepts. After receiving the students' files, he goes to Fireteam Room 601 to meet them. At that moment, Rico, Misora, and Lecty are talking about the creep they had run into earlier when Kanata walks in. He introduces himself as their new instructor, but the girls are clearly unhappy. They are shocked and upset that the same person they had seen as a creep and traitor is now their teacher. Misora, in particular, refuses to accept him, thinking he's careless and doesn't want to understand them. Misora doesn't want Kanata to be her instructor, but he tells her that if she has any complaints, she can take them to the Sky Wizards department. He introduces himself as Kronos and promises to make them stronger, even more powerful than he is, allowing them to beat the toughest teams. Rico, however, disagrees, claiming she doesn't need training because she's a goddess. Kanata responds by saying he hasn't seen her skills yet, but the Sky Wizards data shows that her abilities are actually below Misora's. Reluctantly, Rico agrees but warns Kanata not to fall in love with her after seeing her in action. Meanwhile, Yuri asks Chloe if Kanata is still on medical leave. Chloe reminds her that this is the 6th time she's asked the same question in a week. She explains that Kanata isn't ready for missions yet and has taken up the role of instructor for an E-ranked fireteam, a position Chloe personally arranged. Frustrated, Yuri complains that Kanata avoids helping his own team, has worked in logistics, and now gets to be an instructor. Chloe defends Kanata, insisting that he too wants to protect the city's peace. In the sky, Kanata tries out the E601 and notices that the team isn't working well together. He sees that Misora, although a bit reckless, has good stamina. Lecty has strong moves but gets anxious when facing opponents, which makes her performance shaky. Kanata is impressed by Rico's idea of mixing Lecty's close combat with her sniping skills, but he thinks her plans are too obvious. Later, in the locker room while the three are getting changed, Misora feels down about her small talent's size. Kanata, with his poor timing, walks in to tell them about their training and ends up getting called a creep again. Kanata starts training Team E601, but Rico doesn't want to join and leaves. After Rico goes, Kanata continues to train the other two members. For Lecty's training, he asks her to dress like a maid and hand out flyers for a cafe called Garden Terrace. For Misora, he gives her the task of secretly following Rico to see if she can discover any weaknesses. Misora tries to follow Rico without being noticed, but Rico quickly realizes she's being followed. To keep training, Misora asks if she can go shopping with Rico. She doesn't find any weaknesses, except that Rico loves cute things. Meanwhile, Lecty, who was very shy at first, eventually manages to hand out the flyers. However, Kanata, who visits the cafe for coffee, tells her that her next task will be working as a waitress there, which makes Lecty even more nervous. On her way back from the school cafeteria, Yuri accidentally bumps into Real Nua, a researcher from the alchemist's department, spilling her drink on him. Real falls in love with her at first sight. Yuri apologizes and starts wiping his pants with her handkerchief, but when Chloe calls for her, she hurries off, leaving her handkerchief with Real. Meanwhile, at the cafe, Lecty struggles to serve customers because of her extreme nervousness and social anxiety, so she runs away. Misora finds her and offers to help, but since there are only 2 uniforms, Misora ends up dressing as a bunny girl. Lecty, still anxious, is approached by Lloyd, who saw her running away. He asks if she finds it hard to talk to people and tells her that this difficulty is her weakness. He advises her to trust her instructor and take inspiration from Misora. Seeing Misora working hard, Lecty gains confidence. When she turns to thank Lloyd, she realizes he has already left. With her newfound confidence, Lecty successfully serves the customers. Freon, noticing the 2 E601 members working together, becomes curious about what the traitor Kanata might be planning. Later, Misora complains to Kanata about their training, but Lecty asks if he knew about her social anxiety. Kanata explains that, as a member of the Eisenach family with great skills, their previous battle should have been more competitive, but her anxiety held her back. Lecty admits she hates being so anxious in front of people. Kanata reassures her, saying that no one is ever fully satisfied with themselves, and now that she understands her problem, she can work on solving it. Kanata then asks Misora if she succeeded in her training, but she admits she failed. He buys ice cream for both of them as a reward. Misora questions why he's rewarding her when she not only failed the training but also as a team leader for not noticing Lecty's problem. Kanata responds that learning how much she still needs to improve is progress in itself. He tells Lecty to keep training and informs Misora that she no longer needs to follow Rico since the task was to identify her own weakness. Overcoming it will be another challenge entirely. Later that night, Chloe sneaks into Kanata's room. He reminds her that it's the men's dorm, but she shrugs it off, saying it's just like old times. She notices he's reviewing Misora's data and asks what he has planned for her. The next day, Kanata instructs Misora to switch from the Vanguard Magic Cannon sword to Middle Guard Magic Cannon because she lacks talent in swordsmanship but has high magical reserves and stamina. Misora becomes upset, refusing to accept the change, even if it would make her stronger. She storms out, feeling disappointed in him as an instructor. It is revealed that Misora refuses to give up using her sword because it holds special memories of her late mother. Her mother had been one of the greatest sword knights of her generation, winning countless battles with her large sword. She was a hero to many young wizards, including her daughter, Misora. After Kanata told Misora to stop using the sword, she felt heartbroken and visited her mother's grave. There, she made a promise to never give up the sword and even stopped attending the Sky Wizard Academy. Meanwhile, at the cafe, Lecty was also worried about Misora's sudden absence. After noticing that she hadn't been at the academy for a few days, Kanata decided to visit her. He went to Misora's family's steakhouse and met her father, a well-known chef in the city. When Misora saw Kanata arrive unexpectedly, she quickly left the room. After she was gone, Kanata introduced himself to her father as Misora's instructor. While they talked, Kanata saw a picture of Misora's mother and commented on how much Misora resembled her. Misora's father explained that the photo was his only reminder of his late wife. It was discovered that when a Sky Wizard Knight dies, everyone automatically forgets the person and all memories connected to them. Misora was the only one who could still remember her mother. Her father shared stories of how Misora's mother dedicated much of her life to being a knight, but when she was home, she always tried to be a caring mother. She would often take Misora flying over the city, showing her the world from above. One day, just before her mother was supposed to come home, Misora asked her father to cook a steak for her, but suddenly, he forgot about her mother entirely. That day, Misora's mother had died while defending people from a dangerous enemy. Her father only remembered her after men from the Sky Wizard Corps arrived to inform them of her death and hand over her sword. From that moment, Misora swore to become a great sword knight, just like her mother. Later, Kanata spoke to Misora again and asked her one last time to put down the sword, but she refused, saying it was the only thing she had left from her mother. Seeing her strong will, Kanata smiled and told her she could keep using the sword. He had been testing her determination all along and now knew how to help her improve as a swordsman. Kanata then asked her to promise at her mother's grave that she would become the best sword knight in the world. The following day, Misora returned to the academy to resume her training. Rico dreams of her younger self trying hard but failing to keep up with her successful older sister, Freon, who is surrounded by admirers. The dream ends when Freon scolds Rico for being lazy and waking up late. However, Rico doesn't respond, so Freon leaves, saying Rico can do whatever she likes. Now awake, Rico declares that someone like her doesn't need to follow simple school rules. While taking a bath, she gets startled when she sees something in the shower. At a cafe, Lloyd and Kanata are sitting together, with Lloyd expressing admiration for Kanata. When Kanata asks why, Yuri interrupts, saying Lloyd must be impressed by how Kanata manages to stay in Misgun City despite being hated. Ignoring her, Lloyd and Kanata continue discussing their next opponent, Team E601. Yuri becomes irritated, calling E601 weak and blaming Kanata, their instructor, for not helping. Kanata responds by saying this works in their favor as there will be less pressure to win. Yuri remembers how they used to fight beetles together and storms off, leaving Lloyd to follow and comfort her. Rico arrives at the cafe, and Kanata asks if she's getting lunch. She explains that she just arrived at school late because she saw something unusual in the shower. Kanata jokes that maybe she saw a ghost, but Rico clarifies that it was her own beauty reflected in the shower glass. Kanata laughs, finding her amusing, which reminds Rico of how she was always seen as foolish and weaker compared to her sister. She notices the information about Team E601 and asks Kanata about it. He says that with Lecty and Misora, they might have a shot at winning. Rico then states she still won't train with them, and Kanata doesn't push her, allowing her to leave. In a changing room, Misora and Lecty discuss their improved skills and chances of winning. Kanata joins them, offering to treat them to ice cream. Misora declines, saying they have something important to do. The two girls later approach Rico, asking her to join the training, knowing that Kanata could help her improve too. Rico refuses, saying Kanata hasn't shown any interest in her training. Misora even tries to beg Rico to join the ranking match, but Rico refuses, unwilling to embarrass herself by losing. Kanata interrupts Misora's attempt to beg by lifting her off the ground. Meanwhile, in the Sky Wizard's leader office, Freon tells Chloe about a D-ranked fire team that was defeated during patrol, suspecting a chimera is involved. Chloe reassures her that the Nirvana team will handle it. Freon asks about E601, and Chloe teases her curiosity about that team. Back in the E601 room, Kanata tells Misora that he knew she wouldn't pass up ice cream unless something was on her mind. He agrees with Rico that fighting a battle you know you'll lose isn't cool, but he adds that he's not the type to give up so easily. When Rico tries to argue that he doesn't know her, Kanata interrupts by offering Misora a key to victory. Later, Rico has the same dream again. On her way to school, she spots Real spying on Yuri while she trains. Real is suspicious of Yuri's connection with Kanata, thinking Kanata must have tricked her. Rico asks if he's a stalker, and Real quickly runs away. Kanata begins teaching Misora a powerful move called Strike Blaster, a magical laser attack. He explains that although her sword skills aren't great, her strong magical reserves make this move possible. Misora manages to use it but gets exhausted quickly. She wonders how Kanata handles it so well but notices he's also tired, which surprises her since he used to be an elite. He pats her on the head, and when she asks why, he jokes that she's the perfect height for it. Meanwhile, Rico watches the training and admits to herself that Misora's magical abilities are helpful, but wonders about Kanata's habit of patting the girls' heads. Lecty also asks if she'll get special training, but Kanata reassures her that her skills, passed down from the Eisenac family, are already special. Even though she couldn't land a hit on him, she did make him stay on guard. He pats her head too, causing her to blush. Rico watches them and realizes they've both improved, wondering if she could improve as well by training under Kanata. As she's watching, Kanata suddenly appears behind her. Rico is startled and hides her pink glasses. Kanata asks if they help her activate her clairvoyance ability, and Rico is surprised that he knows about it. He reminds her that her ability lets her see far distances, like what's happening in the sky. Rico asks if Misora's special move is the key to victory he mentioned earlier. She points out that while powerful, the move leaves the user vulnerable without a skilled team to protect them. Kanata agrees and tells her that's why he needs her. Her sniping and strategic skills are just as important as her clairvoyance. Rico is flustered, thinking that only Misora was the key, but Kanata explains that the whole team, Misora, Lecty, and Rico, are all crucial to their success. When Rico asks why he didn't train her, Kanata says that her skills are already godlike, and he wanted the others to catch up. He adds that it's up to her whether she wants to stay a loser or not. Rico is reminded of Freon and starts thinking. The next day, Misora and Lecty are surprised to find Rico already in the sky, ready for training. Kanata smiles, happy to see the team working together. On the day of the ranking match, E601 and E571 faced each other with few spectators. E571 mocks E601, but Rico confidently says that only those of low character look down on others. Just as they are about to start, an alarm sounds and the armored beetles start attacking. As the floating island activated a protective shield, the best sky wizards were sent to battle the approaching beetle monsters. As the monsters neared the city, Kanata and his team helped evacuate civilians, while Yuri, Chloe, and Lloyd prepared to defend against the beetles from another side. However, some beetles broke through the city's defense shield and began invading, causing widespread destruction. Kanata and the girls decided to intervene before the situation got worse. Misora summoned her giant sword and launched a sword cannon blast at the beetles, but since she wasn't in full control of her powers, part of the city was damaged. Thankfully, she still managed to defeat the beetles, saving what was left of the city despite the collateral damage. Meanwhile, Freon observed from the control room, noticing the number of beetles was rapidly increasing. There were now thousands, and they were running out of time. Freon ordered the wizard knights to find and kill the commander of the beetle army, the Chimera. The knights found and killed the Chimera, but the beetles kept fighting. Kanata realized there was likely another Chimera leading the army, and they needed to locate it fast. Yuri, Chloe, and Lloyd were soon surrounded by beetles in the city, but Lloyd remained confident that Kanata would find and defeat the remaining Chimera. Kanata then asked Rico to use her clairvoyance to locate the Chimera, and within seconds, she spotted suspicious activity among the distant beetles. Kanata assigned Misora to deal with the beetles that entered through a gap, while Lecty focused on eliminating the beetles already inside the city. Rico provided support by sniping from a distance. As Misora fought, she suddenly heard ominous music and saw the Chimera emerging from the smoke. It fired a massive energy beam at her, but Kanata intervened just in time, saving her from the attack. Even though he was low on magical energy, Kanata summoned his sword and used his ultimate sword technique. He charged at the Chimera with incredible speed, slaying beetles along the way, and unleashed a powerful blast cannon that destroyed the Chimera. With the Chimera defeated, the remaining beetles retreated from the city. Afterward, Yuri and the other wizard knights realized that Kanata had won, but the effort had completely drained his magical energy, causing him to collapse. Despite the battle's success, the rank competition matches resumed. The girls entered their match feeling confident, believing they could win, but by the end, they had lost by a large margin. Kanata, who had been optimistic about their chances, wasn't entirely surprised by the loss. A few days later, Freon, the head of the Sky Academy, received an order to implement more intense and realistic training to accelerate the students' progress. After the recent battle with the Beetle Army, Kanata pushed his team to train harder. He tasked the girls with bursting hundreds of beetle-shaped balloons in the sky. However, they struggled to work together. Each girl attacked the balloons individually instead of coordinating as a team. Misora started firing in every direction. Rico was distracted by her outfit, and Lecty, overwhelmed by the balloons, panicked. Kanata's attempt to teach them teamwork and strategy seemed to have failed. Meanwhile, Freon had a meeting about the city center's damage and learned that Kanata's team caused it. Initially, she considered suspending the team for a few days, but after reviewing their poor performance in the recent competition, Freon planned to dismiss Kanata from his role. When Team E601 heard about their suspension, they were frustrated, especially since they had defeated the Beetle army, including the Chimera, though no one saw their efforts, so they received no recognition. Despite the suspension, Kanata remained focused on getting the girls ready for the upcoming inter-team tournament. Determined to prove his team's worth, Kanata decided to sign the girls up for the tournament, aiming to win. Later that day, he was called to Freon's office, where she officially removed him from his position as Team E601's instructor. Surprisingly, Kanata wasn't upset and even convinced Freon that only he could properly train the 3 girls. He proposed a deal: if his team won the tournament, Freon would have to lift their suspension. Confident that Kanata's team wouldn't succeed, Freon agreed. Kanata then informed the girls about the tournament and explained the agreement with Freon. He told them the match pairings would be determined the next day and encouraged them to prepare. At the same time, Freon took Yuri, Lloyd, and Chloe to the research center to show them a secret beetle research project. The scientists had collected parts of the Chimera and made important discoveries. Nua, a clumsy scientist who had once bumped into Yuri, explained that the Chimera could regenerate and even multiply, posing a serious threat to the Sky Wizards. This prompted Freon to speed up the students' training to prepare them for future battles with these evolved beetles. The next day, all the tournament participants gathered to draw their match numbers. The random selection system meant that even the weakest team could face the strongest in the first round. After what seemed like a long wait, Misora and her team were paired with a group at their same level. Kanata later met Yuri, who had also entered her team in the tournament. Although Yuri's team had better skills, Kanata was confident in his team and hoped to meet Yuri's group in the finals. Kanata then challenged Yuri, telling her that if his team won, she would have to join them. Feeling confident, Yuri accepted the challenge. Misora and the girls were confused, thinking they only needed to win one match to achieve their goal. Later that day, a student was severely injured by a mysterious figure wearing a hood. These attacks spread fear among the students, leading Yuri, Chloe, and Lloyd to start investigating. They discovered that none of the victims had seen the attacker's face. While discussing the situation at a cafe, Yuri remembered her past with Kanata from 3 years ago. During one match, Kanata had saved her from an attack. At the time, Yuri was a beginner and admired his abilities, secretly developing a crush on him. Meanwhile, Kanata focused on preparing his team for the upcoming tournament. He realized the girls were struggling with teamwork and tried switching their roles and formations to help them understand their responsibilities better. However, the girls still insisted on fighting separately to prove themselves. During an intense training session, they noticed Yuri's team practicing and saw what real teamwork looked like. This made the girls lose confidence, but Kanata delivered an encouraging speech that reignited their determination. Later, Yuri asked Kanata to meet her at a cafe for an important conversation. Misora and the girls, curious about what was happening, secretly followed them and listened in. During their meeting, Yuri asked Kanata to stop wasting his time training Team E601. She believed he should be using his talents for something more important, instead of working with a team she considered hopeless. Kanata, however, calmly reminded Yuri that when he first started teaching her, she was very similar to the 3 girls and even had trouble with basic flying magic. He explained that, although Team E601 had been cast aside by the Academy, he believed he could help them become one of the strongest teams. Meanwhile, Lloyd and Chloe reported their findings about the attacks to Freon. They noticed some patterns. All the victims were male students and users of melee weapons, and the attacks began with lower-ranked classes. The first victim had been from an E-rank fire team, and so far, 3 students from the E, D, and C ranks had been attacked. Lloyd predicted that a B-rank student would be next, and he was right. The following day, a B-rank student was attacked by the same hooded figure. After beating the student, the attacker revealed himself to be Nua, a creepy researcher with an unhealthy obsession with Yuri. He had always dreamed of proving his power by unsheathing his metaphorical Excalibur and showing Yuri that he was the strongest in the Academy. The next morning, during a jog, Lecty ran into Kanata. Though she had a bright future and was undeniably cute, Kanata stayed focused and serious about his mission. They sat down to chat because Lecty had some concerns about their training. She believed their attack strategy was weak, especially since Misora wasn't an effective attacker. Lecty also struggled with her role in the back position, as she preferred close-range combat. Kanata, however, had already noticed these issues but kept the training formation in place so each girl could improve outside her comfort zone. He reassured Lecty to trust the process, as it would pay off in the tournament. To push her further, Kanata took Lecty to the cafe, where she had to endure the chaos of serving customers during busy hours. At first, she was overwhelmed, but eventually she understood how to adapt to her role, especially in a support position. The next day, during training, Lecty applied her new skills by analyzing Misora's attack patterns and guiding her from a distance. Misora, on her part, focused on improving her aim, while Lecty and Rico handled the enemies that escaped Misora's shots. The team's cooperation grew stronger, and they finally developed the ideal formation for both offense and defense. Later, Kanata invited the girls to clean an old, dusty room that would serve as their team headquarters. Meanwhile, Chloe and Lloyd visited the A-rank student who had been attacked, concluding that the mysterious hooded attacker's next target would likely be an S-rank student. At the same time, Kanata and Yuri were having a conversation in the park. Kanata remembered advising Yuri to switch from a sword to a spear because of her tendency to retreat after striking. But Yuri refused to listen and remained loyal to her sword. During their talk, Nua suddenly appeared and challenged Yuri to a fight. She accepted, telling Kanata to stay out of it. Yuri summoned her sword and charged at Nua, but his speed defied logic. He dodged every strike with ease, revealing that his combat skills and magic were far superior to hers. As they fought, Nua made a bizarre proposal to Yuri, leaving her bewildered. He then caught her off guard and delivered a serious injury. Though wounded and cornered, Yuri managed to disarm him, enraging Nua further. He unleashed a powerful technique, the Wind Slash, aiming to finish her off. Just as Nua was about to land the fatal blow, Kanata intervened and shielded Yuri. Furious, Nua attacked Kanata with a barrage of strikes, but Kanata skillfully blocked and countered everyone. Defeated, Nua fled but not before striking Yuri again, causing her to lose consciousness. That night, Nua, humiliated and angry, began hearing disturbing voices in his head. After Kanata killed the Chimera, a small part of its consciousness somehow survived and began to manipulate Nua, pushing him to use its powers to grow stronger. Meanwhile, Kanata took Yuri to the girls' room so she could rest and recover, surrounded by them. When Yuri woke up, she initially felt awkward around the girls, but over time, they bonded and became friends. Later, Kanata returned with a good luck charm for Yuri, and after she thanked him for saving her, she went back to her dormitory. Finally, the day of the tournament arrived. Misora became anxious and started distancing herself from Lecty and Rico. Kanata noticed her unusual behavior and asked what was troubling her. Misora admitted that she felt like a burden to her teammates and was worried that she was letting them down. Kanata reassured her, explaining that she was overthinking things and that her assumptions were not true. He encouraged her to trust herself and her surroundings, telling her that when the moment came, she would know what to do. As the match started, Misora rushed in to attack the opposing team on her own, but they easily dodged her strikes. The enemy quickly countered, almost knocking Misora out of the fight. Still unsure of herself, Misora suddenly remembered Kanata's advice. Her teammates, Lecty and Rico, began attacking the enemy team, giving Misora time to regroup and reflect on her mistake. With renewed determination, she charged her sword with magical energy and unleashed a powerful cannon blast, taking down all the members of the opposing team. Thanks to her efforts, Kanata's team secured their first ever win and advanced to the next round. Meanwhile, Nua was conducting a secret experiment using a part of the Chimera's body. He extracted the Chimera's power into a liquid form and injected it into himself, seeking to increase his strength even further. Kanata's team kept winning match after match, and after defeating several teams, they finally made it to the finals against Yuri's team. Their victories surprised everyone, especially Freon, since Team 6001 was once on the verge of disbandment. News of their remarkable journey spread throughout the academy. On the day of the final match, the audience mostly cheered for Yuri's team, as they had better stats and many still viewed Kanata's team as underdogs. However, Misora, Lecty, and Rico remained determined to prove themselves. The battle started fiercely, with both teams fighting on equal footing. As the clash of swords echoed, Yuri's team prepared a decisive strike, but Rico quickly blocked a crucial blow, saving Lecty just in time. As the match went on, Yuri's team began to take control. They had studied every move Kanata's team made and anticipated their responses. The captain of Yuri's team chased Misora, and it seemed certain that they would win. But Misora had a plan. She lured the captain into Rico's shooting range. Though the captain barely survived the head-on shot, it was all part of Kanata's strategy. From the sidelines, Kanata confidently told Yuri not to underestimate his team's potential. It became clear that Rico's attack was just a distraction. Before Yuri could warn her teammates, Misora fired a cannon blast that hit them all. As the dust cleared, Yuri's team was defeated, lying on the ground. The audience, including Freon, was stunned by Team 6001's victory. Just as the girls were about to celebrate, Nua crashed the scene. After killing the broadcaster and setting off alarms, he blew up the broadcast room and appeared in the arena, obsessed with Yuri. Before Nua could make a move, Kanata intervened with a powerful kick that sent Nua flying. However, empowered by the Chimera's strength, Nua quickly recovered and hurled chairs at Kanata, injuring his leg. Seeing Kanata hurt, Yuri drew her sword to fight Nua, but her weapon was easily broken. Misora, Lekti, and Rico joined the battle, launching a cannon blast in a desperate attempt to stop the now monstrous Nua. Lloyd and Chloe unleashed their energy blasts at Nua, but the monstrous figure barely flinched. Chimera's DNA had taken full control, transforming Nua into a muscular beast. He blocked Lloyd and Chloe from interfering, grabbed Yuri, and squeezed her so tightly that she began to lose consciousness. In a desperate moment, Kanata, using his full strength, summoned his massive black sword and launched an attack on the monster. Though he slashed Nua into pieces, the creature regenerated its limbs. The monster retaliated with an energy blast, which Kanata managed to counter with his own, revealing that he had absorbed the powers of the beetles he fought earlier. At the same time, Misora, Lekti, and Rico combined their strength to launch a powerful attack, successfully freeing Yuri from the monster's grip. But just as Yuri tried to escape, Nua's tentacles reached out to attack her. Kanata, showing his resolve, stepped in to protect her, taking the blow himself. Before the monster could finish Kanata and create further chaos, Yuri and the girls joined forces. Misora, Lekti, and Rico kept the monster at bay long enough for Yuri to summon her anti-regeneration spear, the one weapon capable of stopping the creature's healing ability. With a precise strike, she stabbed the monster in the chest, realizing that Nua had finally been defeated. As the spear pierced him, the monster began to disintegrate, and their victory was sealed. Afterward, the academy returned to safety, and the injured were taken to the hospital. Despite his near-fatal wounds, Kanata survived thanks to Chimera's regenerative powers. True to form, he avoided taking any credit and disappeared. Meanwhile, Freon kept her word, lifting Team 6001's suspension and allowing Kanata to continue as their instructor. A few days later, Yuri officially joined Team 6001 as promised, and Kanata resumed his role, training the girls to become the best team the Sky Wizard Academy had ever seen. That's it for today, my fellow men of culture. Like and subscribe the channel for more plot-filled recaps.